Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Uncovered. I'm Sophie Villa.
I'm George Ebro.
I'm Isabella Ovio.
And this episode is going to be about how media has been impacted by COVID-19.
This episode will focus primarily on two sides of this issue. First, we'll be covering journalism, specifically photojournalism. Then, we'll be covering how the television industry is being impacted as well.
Our first interview was with Matias Oncer, who is a photojournalist for the Miami Herald and El Nuevo Herald, who showed us how he was affected by COVID-19 in the workforce.
So without further ado, here we have Mr. Matias Oncer. Thank you so much for being with us, sir.
I'm doing all right, man. Hanging in there. I'm trying to stay safe.
So our first question is going to be, what are some challenges you faced while publishing and working during this pandemic?
For photographers, I think it has been pretty difficult. It's that relationship between us and our subjects and how close we get. And even the reporters, because, they're obviously interviewing people and getting close. But for the photographers, we're always putting our cameras, as close as we can to the action. But the ways that we've been, or at least myself, have tried to stay safe is using a longer lens, something that lets me get in close, take that photo and get out as fast as I can. And so I find myself now using that more often, especially when covering a protest, something that's fluid and it's moving. Most people at the protest were wearing masks, but there's obviously some that aren't. And even the ones who are, they're yelling. It's all in the air, and who knows what's in the air during that time. So that's what I would resort to, just try to keep my distance, use a long lens, and always try to capture the moment.
So since the start of the pandemic, have you had a new routine before preparing to go out to a job?
So every time I get an assignment, it'll have kind of a detailed explanation of what I'm going to be doing. So I always brief myself on whatever the issue is and check, okay, what is it that I'm going to be doing? And then how does COVID play on this now, right? And so I think a lot of reporters, they're working remotely. They have a lot of sources and they're well connected. So they can pick up the phone and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Mayor Jimenez, pick up the phone, you get your statement from him and you can keep going and keep reporting. Whereas for us, it's really tough because we have to be out in the field. Like I can't shoot it from the window of my apartment, I have to go out on the street. You really think about what situations you're getting yourself into every day and, you just try to stay safe.
You had mentioned that you were taking photos at the protests. We're talking about the Black Lives Matter protests, correct?
Yes. May 30th, I think was the day that it all started. I might be wrong on that.
So what is your mindset when you're tackling an assignment just like that?
Yeah, I've covered protests before, but I had never been in a confrontation where the protesters start getting violent towards the police and then the police reciprocate that and start shooting rubber bullets and tear gas. And so you have to be paying attention at all times and make sure that you're safe. But again, it's just trying to keep my distance, right? Because sometimes the best pictures are the ones that, maybe the ones who don't have a mask. It's not that they didn't have a mask. Maybe they were really passionate and it fell and it got stepped on by someone and, you're not going to pick it up and you're in the middle of it and it gets tough. I always keep my mask on, always don't take it off. Try not to touch my face. And then as soon as I get home, shower. And luckily, thank God, nothing has happened. And I've been able to stay safe.
Now, in this digital age of social media, where everyone owns a smartphone, what can most photographers do to differentiate themselves in a professional way, especially now during this pandemic?
Well, the best camera you have is the one that you have on you, right? So I made some nice pictures with my phone. So you flip that, right? It's a lot of people have phones and they're all taking pictures. But out of those pictures, how many of them are actually storytelling photos, right? And that's what we specialize in is making sure that the pictures that we shoot tell a story. And so they're not manipulated. They're honest moments. I don't mind the cell phones. It's just kind of the digital age that we live in. And when I go out, I know that it's my eye, right? That's what's making these pictures. It's I'm looking out and trying to capture moments.
How do you think the future of journalism and photojournalism will be impacted by COVID-19?
It's a good question. I think a lot of people like to say that photojournalism is gone, and I don't believe that. I think it's always evolving, and it's something that we just have to keep going with it and making sure that we're up to speed with whatever new tech comes. But as far as COVID, I think, you'll always need somebody to go out there and capture history as it's happening. And so, to me, it just seems like this is just one chapter that we're going through. And I think it's going to shine a light on the type of research that needs to go into, the government to be able to fund a cure or more vaccines for future prevention. But yeah, I think photojournalism in itself is just going to be just as strong as it is now, and it's just going to continue to help bring truth to light.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Yeah, no problem, man. I hope I was helpful.
For our next interview, we're going to be talking with Gael Sanchez, a young actor working on a Telemundo series called Días para Enamorarnos, which basically translates to 100 Days to Fall in Love. Thank you for talking with us, Gael.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Honestly, thank you so much.
So our first question is, what setbacks have you faced while working on set?
Yeah, so Corona was definitely a big issue. You know, the project that I was working on right before Corona hit and everything was Días para Enamorarnos with Telemundo. But, you know, they had to stop production because it just wasn't safe. And originally, we were just told that the project was canceled entirely. You know, we were all bummed out, but at the same time, it's like things happen. But after a while, things started to become a little safer with a little more precautions. We were getting tested every day. Getting a cotton swab up my nose every day was not fun, but, you know, it's necessary to have to film. And that was pretty fun. But definitely Corona was a big setback and didn't help out the production a lot. But I'm just happy that we were able to return after.
So now with COVID going on, what are some requirements that actors have to undergo before walking into the studio to film?
I think one of the big ones was that we would not take off our masks until it was like 3, 2, 1 action. Like until they got like to 2, you had to like really fast take off your masks, which yes, some could see as defeating the purpose. And I would agree. But you know, it's kind of like that. You wouldn't be around the studios without a mask. Therefore, you wouldn't get anyone sick on the off chance that you were sick. But it was really unlikely that you would have been sick if you were getting tested every day. But definitely that was like a huge precaution. You know, the cafeteria wasn't a thing anymore. They set up a studio where you could only sit 2 people in a table, and the tables were like really long and separated. It was really bizarre, to be honest.
What do you think had been the most drastic change pre-corona and now?
I think definitely, you know, not being able to interact, not being able to say hi to people as you normally would is pretty weird, you know, because like I want to go hug them and say hi, but Corona is just not allowing that. And it's like, no, you can't, you know, you quickly start to realize that it's like, oh yeah, that's a thing. And then like, we don't want to get other people contagious and everything. So it's strange. It's definitely strange, you know, having to wear masks, only seeing people's eyes is very weird.
Now, you had mentioned that when you're recording, you keep the mask on until the count of 2 and you just have to really quickly take it off and like put it away.
Right.
How would that apply with social distancing when you're shooting?
Due to the fact that you like really, there is no way of social distancing and not ruining, I guess you could say, the magic of making it seem as if it's not there. It was still a risk, of course, but it was a risk that had to be taken to be able to film properly. But they're not walking around without masks. It's just for the scene. And then once the scene is over, you immediately put the masks back on.
Now, in the future, do you think pursuing your career as an actor will be more difficult because of this pandemic?
I think that companies are definitely not prepared if this keeps going. I feel like there's definitely ways of being safer, but I think that like productions will slow down a lot if this continues, and that could be very dangerous for a lot of actors.
So I know in the show that you do, sometimes they do behind the scenes looks. Do you know if they would still do that, like the interviews with the actors now with the pandemic going on?
I mean, sure, it's very probable, but it just wouldn't be with a mask on. I definitely see that it's possible to do like behind the scenes of being like, oh, today we recorded this or blah, 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 but it would definitely be with a mask off. But yeah, they really took some great precautions to make sure that we were all safe.
Well, thank you for meeting with us, Gael. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Uncovered. We'll see you next time.